From the Income Protection Journal, you're listening to the Income Protection Journal podcast with Jamie Fleischner.
Veterinary medicine depends on highly trained professionals whose income, practices, and patient care are all tied to their ability to work. But illness, injury, and burnout don't follow a schedule. And when a veterinarian can't practice, the financial impact can extend far beyond the individual doctor. Today's episode looks at often overlooked risk in veterinary medicine, income disruption due to disability. And we'll talk about how disability risk affects veterinarians, practice owners, staff, and patients, and why income protection deserves the same attention as liability coverage and business planning. Our guest is Dr. Michelle Custead, a board-certified veterinary medical oncologist and the owner of Ally Veterinary Specialty Center, a boutique referral practice based in Waltham, Massachusetts. In addition to her clinical work, Dr. Custead understands firsthand how a practice depends on the health and availability of its doctors. Michelle graduated from VAMD Regional College of Veterinary Medicine in 2010. After completing a rotating internship at Garden State Veterinary Specialists, an oncology internship in Washington, D.C. under a pioneering oncologist in both pediatric oncology and canine osteosarcoma, she completed a residency and a master's degree from Purdue University. With over 10 years of experience in medical oncology, she brings a wealth of experience and expertise. She is published in the fields of personalized medicine, dose optimization, and metronomic chemotherapy. She prides herself in excellent communication and ensuring that pet owners fully understand their pet's diagnoses and options. Knowing that she has helped a family decide what is best for them while ensuring their pet maintains a good quality of life brings great satisfaction. Today, she's joining us to talk about what happens when a veterinarian can't work and how income risk shows up in real practices, and why planning for a disability and income protection is critical for long-term career and business stability. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
It's nice to finally meet you. And it's great, we've worked together for a long time, but it's finally actually nice to see a name and a face and to meet you in person.
I know we've actually never met each other face to face. So this is really nice opportunity.
Yeah. So when we first met, you were working at a clinic and then you've transitioned into being a practice owner. So how has that kind of changed your mentality as a veterinarian?
Yeah, I would say that I now feel a different sense of responsibility. Before, my responsibility was to my coworkers, to my colleagues, and of course to my clients, patients, and their families. Now I feel like I have this whole new group of people that I have to make sure are well taken care of at the end of the day. So there's a lot more responsibility that goes into it. I have to make sure my employees and then therefore the things that depend on them are taken care of. So
you have to wear a lot of different hats, not just as a practitioner, but now you're the business owner. So, and then how has it changed your perspective in terms of income protection? Do you feel more of a sense of responsibility, vulnerable from that perspective? Has it changed at all?
Yeah, so before I thought about what do I need to make sure that at the end of the day and in the upcoming months I'm taken care of, I have enough saved. Now it's a much larger scale. So I have to think about a lot of other contingency plans. If something were to happen that slowed business, or if I lost an important employee, could we continue to sustain the same pace, or at least I'm able to sustain their payroll in the months going forward? So there's a lot more saving and protection that goes into being a business owner than just a person, because now I have many, many employees that I have to protect.
So how big is your practice? Tell me about your actual practice.
Yeah, so right now I'm a solo doctor. We are trying to build the practice to be about 8 to 9 doctors total. So this upcoming year, our goal is to add 3 additional doctors onto our staff, which is a big goal. But
that's a big undertaking, going from 1 to that many. Yeah.
Yes,
to
we have
scale
a
it?
couple of people that we are currently talking to. So it may work out that all three come on board. It may work out that only one comes on board. So we're really hoping to grow in the upcoming year. With that growth comes a lot of changes, but I'm hopeful, and we just moved into a larger facility so we can accommodate that growth.
I was going to ask you because that to scale it, you need more space to accommodate more doctors and then more responsibilities. Yes. So is there a difference? Because you used to just do more general veterinary work and then now you're doing more oncology. Is there sort of a difference in the way the practice works and what you're doing on a regular basis?
So I initially, when I was first trained, you're trained in general medicine and you go through your internship and residency. And then after you get out of your residency, just like an MD, that's essentially all you do. So I have been doing medical oncology primarily since I finished my residency.
Oh, wow.
And the pace and the difference in how you treat patients is very different. So general practitioners, they have shorter appointments, like vaccine appointments or, just regular annual checkups. Sometimes those can be very quick appointments. A lot of times in oncology, it's complicated. There's a lot of emotions. There's different levels of care that needs to be provided, both in terms of testing and treatment. So the appointments tend to be longer. And we tend to build the day depending on how many procedures and how many patients are getting treated.
And do you do the actual surgeries too, or does that get
Yeah, so I do small procedures. So I refer to a board certified surgeon if needed for that pet's cancer treatment. However, in the process of working up that patient's cancer, if a biopsy needs to be done or bone marrow aspirate or core needs to be performed, then I can do those procedures. I can also help facilitate advanced imaging like CT scans or ultrasounds, or even radiographs or x-rays for those patients.
See, what fascinates me about veterinarians is when I think of veterinarian, I'm a dog person. I just think dogs, but you probably work with the whole spectrum of animals,
So
correct?
in the very beginning, when I was being trained to become a veterinarian, you have to handle everything.
Like
So
lizards and snakes and
cows and horses and
yes,
sheep and so you really get your hands dirty, and we
literally,
are,
yes.
yeah.
So now what is your practice? Are you doing primarily?
Mostly, just primarily dogs and cats. There are oncologists out there that have treated horses, that have treated pocket pets. We call pocket pets like rabbits or hamsters or gerbils.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there are a wide range of animals that can be treated for cancer care, but it's primarily dogs and cats.
And don't they say like dogs, like 80% of them or some really large percentage at some point will have cancer?
Yes, you're right. So, unlike in people, the number one cause of death for both our dogs and cats, unfortunately, is cancer. So we see
Hmm.
a lot of cancer, and that's a testament to how good the field of veterinary medicine, how well we've done at treating preventable diseases. So these pets are passing away due to diseases of old age. So that's really phenomenal. However, that there probably is if you look at the statistics, it's probably not just age-related diseases that is the cause for the rise of cancer-related deaths or cancer-related diagnoses. It's probably also that we truly are seeing more cancer in our pets. That
Is
maybe
it more that it's more detected? I mean, like when I was growing up, our dogs would pass away and we didn't always know why. And then now, as an adult, I think of all the dogs that we've had that have passed, I think 7 out of 8 had some kind of cancer.
Yeah, you're right that we expect a lot more medical care for our pets than our parents' generation did.
Yeah.
And so we are detecting cancer more. However, I think that also there's a lot more inbreeding that's occurring. So with that inbreeding, you're also seeing diseases of cancer that you wouldn't otherwise have seen
Oh,
because
that's interesting.
bottleneck of a dean pool.
So do you see it more in purebred dogs or dogs that come from breeders as opposed to rescues?
Yeah, so depending. So there are certain dog breeds that are sort of poster child for cancer. So golden retrievers, unfortunately, they get a lot of cancer. And there's other breeds. So there's, interestingly, in veterinary medicine and dogs in particular, there are certain types of cancers that track breeds. So certain breeds are much more likely to get certain cancers than others. And then there are certain breeds that actually have a decreased risk of cancer.
So is that just a genetic thing?
It is. It is. It's just a genetic thing.
So I have to ask you, what about border collies? That's our breed.
Yeah, border collies, not necessarily. So they're not sort of known to have a lot of cancer, which is good.
Even though some of ours have, but yes. Yeah. But they did live longer than, my dogs growing up. So maybe it was just detected, because we had them longer. So getting back to the insurance conversation. So it's interesting because, we work with a lot of physicians and dentists, and for them, it just seems obvious that they need to protect their incomes, but it doesn't seem as obvious for veterinarians. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. So one is, I don't think that we are told to get, I don't think that's not part of our training. People don't advise us how to protect our wealth or our income. Also, I think we're just generally a really hardy bunch of people. We work, I've already mentioned this, we work hands-on with our patients. We're a lot of times on the ground. We do hard work day in and day out. And I think we just don't make a lot of fuss about ourselves as a general group. And so because of that, I think we don't like the attention to be on us. Instead, we like the attention to be on the pets and the people that we care about.
That's actually really interesting. Yeah, that is interesting.
So I think that partly it's because of that we just have this mentality that we've gotten this far, just sort of taking care of business. Why do we need to? We're going to continue to probably be fine because we work really hard every day, really hands-on. And so we don't necessarily believe that we're going to ever get hurt because we've never gotten hurt up to this point. And I think that that's the mentality that we have.
So when you started your practice, like when you did you buy your practice or did you buy an existing practice?
No. So I created it from the ground up.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because a lot of times when you buy a practice, sometimes they say, okay, well, you're taking out the loan. The loan officer or the banker says you need to protect this if you become sick or injured. And when you buy or when you start a practice, oftentimes you have to get liability insurance, professional insurance. It just kind of comes with the territory. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like why do you think people, like maybe it's like what you just said, people just say, okay, yes, I need a liability policy. I could get sued, but they don't think that they're ever going to be injured, I guess.
Yeah. Which is sort of, unlike some human doctors where it's not as hands-on, I don't get the sense, I don't think that they're, an internal medicine specialist or a family doctor is likely to get bit by their patient.
Yeah, or radiologists, they're just looking at slides.
Yes. So, if anything, we need disability insurance even more than our maybe other healthcare colleagues. And so it is interesting because we very much do need that disability insurance. And I heard somewhere once that up to 30% of veterinarians will actually develop an allergy to a pet. And at some point that allergy could become so bad that they can't work in veterinary medicine anymore. And so,
wow.
Yeah. So protecting that investment that you've made into your future, into your career. And a lot of times we have the same amount of loans that a human physician does. So like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, and the other thing too is a lot of times the veterinarians work at small practices where they don't have group benefits, whereas human doctors, they might go work at a big hospital or a Kaiser or a place like that, and they just assume, okay, well, my employer's going to take care of me. But a lot of veterinarians are small business owners, and they're really relying on themselves to take care of all of their benefits.
There is like a a disability insurance sort of that you get, but it's not nearly as extensive as a disability insurance that you would get outside of a group. So I've been lucky to work with groups that offered very limited disability, but not to the extent that, working with a professional such as yourself, you would help guide us to obtain.
Have you ever come across somebody who's actually had a claim or been injured or couldn't work as a veterinarian?
But I do know, like through colleagues, I do know of people. So for example, like I know of when cats, when they bite you, their teeth are almost like little teeny daggers which can instill or seed bacteria deep into the tissue, and then it can close up really quickly and that bacteria can just fester. And I know of many veterinarians, well, not many, but numerous veterinarians who have had to have multiple surgeries of their hands in order to sort of get through this injury. And sometimes it's quite debilitating. And so, I mean, that's just one example, but we are very much hands-on. And so there's a great risk.
Especially the equine veterinarians too.
Yeah.
I've had equine veterinarians that have been kicked, fallen, they, fall off the horse and break their back. I mean, it's a it can be very dangerous.
Very dangerous. I don't even want to get into some stories I have of what I've seen personally, some severe injuries. And also in veterinary school, my roommate was a equine surgeon. She was getting her residency in equine surgery. And the stories she told,
Well, tell me one of the stories. What's one that's really interesting?
Well,
this is the stuff I talk about. I find it interesting.
Well, I'm not going to tell you the most gruesome one. But I'll tell you the next one down. So if you've ever been in a barn, or nowadays, I guess a lot of people use barn doors as part of their decorating. So that they sort of like swing in like that. And so one of the doctors was putting their hands through the doors, and the horse leaned back against the door and shut it on her hands and completely fractured both arms immediately. So of course that she couldn't work, and she was a surgeon, so she was unable to work based off of that injury.
Was that a permanent injury or was that temporary?
No, I believe it was temporary, but I did not hear of what ended up happening. So that was the less gruesome of the stories. There's some that are much worse.
And I can imagine if you're in zoology, there can be some unreal types of injuries.
Yeah, and I think that with zoo medicine, they take, so I was initially interested in zoo medicine. So I wanted to be a zoo doctor first before I went into medical oncology, which is an interesting turn. But so I spent a lot of time in zoos during my training, and they take a lot more precautions with their animals than a equine vet would.
So maybe they're more aware of the risk.
Yeah. And there's also, a team of people like husbandry staff that their whole goal is to protect the medical team. And sometimes they just won't even take on, trying to really work with a patient with one of these zoo animals if it's just not safe to be.
Yeah. So how did you decide to go from zoology or zoo medicine, I should say, to oncology? How did you make that shift?
So it was a number of things. So I had mentioned in the beginning that similar to human medicine, we have to go through a rotating internship. And through that formalized process, you rotate through all the different specialties. And when I rotated through, I had previously had a bunch of experience with zoo medicine because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And so I was sort of top heavy with a bunch of that experience. And then I had to rotate through medical oncology. And sometimes you just meet individuals that are so inspiring and so good at their job that
Yeah.
they just sort of draw you in. And so I met one of those individuals and I saw myself in her. Like I thought to myself, I could do this. And I loved the bond that you have with your patients' families. I really enjoyed being able to help clients through a really difficult time. And I also really am a big dork. And so I enjoyed the biology of cancer a lot. So it was sort of a moment where I got sort of hit in the face with this love that I wasn't expecting. And at the same time, we talk about money together a lot. And, you leave schooling and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And then to become a zoo veterinarian, you get hardly any money for the work that you do. And it's one of the most
Which is unbelievable to me because that kind of specialization is so unique.
It is so unique. And
it's just not funded. Yeah.
I mean, it's not funded. And so the prospect of having to pay off my loans and never being able to do so if I went into zoo medicine was real.
Yeah.
And so it's also a profession where you could go through your entire residency, leave your residency, and not have a job because there's so few jobs available.
And the people who have them don't leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like a smart choice, even if it was something that I may have loved.
Yeah. So do you feel like the oncology is a really emotional type of job? I can only imagine that it's got to be very, very intense.
Very emotional. It's very intense. It's very, very intense. There are days when every person I talk to cries.
Oh.
But the good news is that most of the time our pets have no idea they have a diagnosis of cancer.
But don't they smell it? Like, isn't it true that dogs can smell cancer? Like, do they know that they're sick?
They have to be taught what it is. So like there are cancer detecting dogs. So you can teach a dog to detect breast cancer, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But they train them to be able to detect them. And I don't believe that they have the awareness to know what the repercussions are of that smell.
Okay.
So
they just know there's something there. So they probably sense, I mean, they might be in pain too.
It depends. So probably as the cancer advances, a lot of cancers are painful. So 65 to 80% of people with advanced cancer will have pain at the end. But cancer is a big, huge disease entity, and you can't paint a wide brush. There are some cancers that as they progress aren't that painful. And then we have the ability in veterinary medicine to end suffering with humane euthanasia. And so we a lot of times can let them go peacefully before they are to the point where they're truly suffering. And especially with a terminal illness such as cancer, where we know what the end is going to be, it's quite a blessing to be able to help them.
Oh, absolutely. Because we've had to do that many, many times. And I've seen humans have to really suffer, and it's almost inhumane.
I agree.
They have to go through that. So how do you kind of keep your emotions in check, having to have those kinds of conversations, or do you just get used to it?
I think just like a human physician, you compartmentalize and you just get used to it. And I think there's certain people that have that type of constitution where they can go and have this really truly empathetic, touching conversation and be a support to that person while also guiding them and teaching them and advising them. And then they can go into the next room with their nursing staff and laugh about something that they saw on the internet, and you change how you feel and what you feel based off of the context of the place where you find yourself. And so I think that I've just learned how to both take care of myself and sort of read myself so that at the end of the day or at the end of the week, if it's been a particularly taxing week with a lot of really hard moments, I know when I just need some time alone or need to do things to recharge.
That's
And
probably good advice for the younger ones coming in, because
and
it's probably something you've learned over time.
yes. And it's not something that you can, it's something that you can help the new doctors coming up understand that it will get easier, and also to pace yourself. And I think that's partly why the training to become a doctor is so long, is because there's so much training that just isn't root memorization, or there's pattern recognition, and there's the understanding of how to help people or pets in different situations and with different goals, and be able to communicate that as well as possible.
Yeah, but you can't always teach compassion and empathy and
No, you cannot. So there's certain
and
people
compartmentalization and those types of things.
and so
Sometimes either.
yeah, and so going back to the insurance conversation, like sometimes this is just not the right profession for some people. And so during the training process, you get to the point where you sort of, through the many years that it takes to become a doctor, that's why rotating through all these different subspecialties is really important. So you start to realize this is just not in me. Like, I'm going to go and be a radiologist. I cannot be an oncologist.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of funny sort of memes and podcasts out there about, the type of people that become radiologists versus the type of people that become anesthesiologists. And we sort of poke fun at each other because they are very much these tropes that exist. And
sometimes they're on point a little bit.
They really are. Yeah.
Yes. And the pathologists, they don't have to work with living patients.
No.
There's a lot of that. Yes, I've seen some of those. And a lot of times they kind of are on point.
Yeah,
so
I agree. And I think that's why we in the medical field get such a big kick out of them, because we see it reflected in our day-to-day lives and our interaction with other colleagues.
So do you see a lot of people getting burned out? Do you think that that's a big deal? I know it's a big deal with a lot of physicians. I'm seeing so many physicians, that are only 5-10 years in wanting to retire early or do side gigs. Are you seeing that as much with veterinarians?
Yeah, I would say probably right about the 5-year mark post-residency, I was trying to figure out how do I exit. And it was real. And it wasn't the patients. It wasn't the work. It was everything else. It was management. It was how we took care of each other, or lack thereof. It was the lack of feeling seen by those that ran the practice, sort of trying to force a business model into something that is so personal at the end of the day. And also it's hard, especially with, I think, veterinarians in particular. There's statistics that say of all medical professions, dentists, human physicians, veterinarians have the #1 suicide rate by far.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? That actually really surprises me. I thought it was dentists.
No,
maybe tell me a little more about that. Why do you think that is?
So there's a huge movement right now that's called Not One More Vet, because it's like almost every other year I hear of a colleague that has committed suicide. It's really, really bad. And I think it's our comfort with euthanasia, plus I think the extra burden that we carry, that we're not as financially, we don't have the same financial stability that a human physician may. So we have more loans and our days are just as hard. And, I think that we are really sensitive to our owners. And if we get told by an owner that we're only in it for the money, it really, really hurts. And so, with the trolling that can exist with social media. And so I don't know, I haven't studied it, but I think there's a lot of possible reasons why veterinarians in particular may be more at risk
Is that more of a newer phenomenon, or do you think it's always been that way?
So it started this focus on mental health in the veterinary profession, that conversations around it and the recognition of our high suicide rate has been I've been hearing about it ever since I graduated. So at least 15 years.
Do you think they're addressing it in the veterinary schools?
They're really trying to. I don't think that there's a one size fits all type of answer. They're even like in state legislature, they're even trying to address it. So, there's a lot of campaigns to try to provide resources to veterinarians and vet staff for mental health. So a lot of states will provide completely free mental health, whether it's counseling or financial coaching or, help with caretaking responsibilities, some type of extra resources for veterinarians because it is so bad.
So now that you're a business owner and you're going to be bringing in other veterinarians, thinking about all of the risk, the physical risk and suicide risk, all of these things, are there things that you can put in place to help the people that you're bringing in your staff?
I think first and foremost, and I don't have all the answers, so I'm going to preface it with that. But when I started, when I decided to take this on, part of the reason why I decided to take this on and to become a business owner was because I wanted it to be different than what I was seeing out there. So I wanted it to feel like you knew that your boss had your back first and foremost. Like I wanted people to be seen by the people that run the business part of it, because that relationship is super, super important. And I think that a lot of times the business people are up in sort of this halo over here, or this silo, over here, and then the medical staff are in this silo over there, and there's no communication between them. And so nobody understands, or very limited communication between them. And so I think that there can be a great disconnect, and then resentment can build. So I really want to, and I believe that I have created a culture where people really feel like they have access to me and that they understand decisions that are being made, and that they feel like the decisions that are being made are for the benefit of the individuals and for the team as a whole. Yeah. I also think it's important that people feel not only like they emotionally somebody has their back, and that they're seen, and that they know that if something bad were to happen, that they're not going to lose their jobs, or that like they have security. But I also think it's important that they are taken care of from a benefits package and a financial package. And, we should be able to do our job, and the job that we have a great passion for, and also be able to take care of the people that we love.
I think that's great, because I think what I'm seeing happening more and more, and you probably are too, that a lot of these veterinary practices are being bought out by private equity, and it just feels so impersonal. I mean, I know from the patient standpoint, we go in and every time it's somebody else, it just feels like you're just a number, you're going through it, and you can kind of just sense it, the feeling of it. And I wonder if that has something to do with it. And I think it's great what you're doing, because you're kind of going against the grain, saying, let's go back to the old school where it's about relationships. And I actually do care about the patients and the people and the practice.
And their families.
And the families and everybody matters. You're not just some widget coming into some practice, because I think that probably plays a role with the mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That connection with the person really, really matters. And when you take that out of the game, when you pull that out, then you're left with no sense of reward at the end of the day. And it is ultimately like, we love our jobs because we get to see the benefit to the pet in front of us and their families. And if you start to limit that interaction between the medical staff and the families, and you say, oh, you only have 15 minutes that you can spend in that exam room, and there's no wiggle room, then that feels wrong to
Yeah,
us.
you go in, you drop a bomb. Your dog has cancer. I got to go to my next patient. So read this leaflet. Like
Exactly. No,
that's terrible.
it
That's
is terrible.
yeah. And then as a veterinarian, you probably feel like, oh my God, I just,
You don't feel good either.
yeah,
No.
exactly. I can't believe I just did that to those people.
Yes,
So it's awful.
yes, it's awful. It's awful every way you cut it. So I think that also probably contributes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hopefully we're able to create something different where, it really, like you said, it brings it back to that relationship. And that's really what
Absolutely.
to build.
So we're going to take a quick break. Let me write down the time. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Dr. Custead will talk about why disability risk isn't just an issue for veterinarians. It's a business risk that can impact an entire practice. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Michelle Custead, and we're talking about disability risk, income protection, and what happens when a veterinarian can't work. So from a business resilience standpoint, what planning should veterinarians and practice owners do before a disability insurance or a disability disruption or a health disruption occurs? What can you do as a practice owner to keep things running smoothly?
Yeah, so I think it's about looking at the worst case scenario, right? We're taught as medical professionals to, before doing any procedure, before anesthetizing any patient, to always plan for the what ifs, the emergency that we don't expect to happen but could happen. And so you make sure you have every possible scenario thought through so that you're ready to act if you need to. And I think taking that same mindset to your own financial health is also really, really important. And so as a business owner, I think it's important to look at it that way, but also from a personal standpoint, for those people who aren't business owners, think about, who do I call first? If there was an emergency, who do I want my medical team to call if I happen to be in the emergency room? Or where are those financial resources, and are they accessible to the people that need them? Or does someone know even how to access that material if they know where to find it? And then who's able to make medical decisions on your behalf? And as particular to a practice owner, it is also making sure that there's somebody in your practice that if you can't be there, that they can still pay payroll, and they can still make sure that people are able to come to work and do some type of work while you're healing or getting back on your feet.
So especially in a small practice too, who could fill in for that person if they're, they shut their arms in a barn door.
Yes. Like, what are those contingency plans? How do you find a locum?
Exactly. Are there good locums for veterinarians?
There are for specialists. Yeah. I mean, they take some time to get. So a lot of times if you have a planned leave of absence, like
a maternity leave.
Yeah. Then you can absolutely get a locum. It can be harder to, it can take weeks to get a locum in the event that something sudden were to happen. And so that's where having these contingencies in place really matters.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we did talk about burnout, and it does sound like burnout is a wellness issue and a disability risk. So we'll move on from there. What happens when there aren't contingency plans? Have you seen any veterinary practices where, they just sort of wing it and they don't plan for?
I haven't personally ever been in a practice where something like that happened, but I have seen it. So where you all of a sudden can't get a hold of so you oftentimes, as a veterinary oncologist, I work with their family doctor. And so we're constantly in conversation sometimes. And so sometimes it'll all of a sudden, I just can't get a hold of that practice. And I'm calling and I'm leaving messages, I'm sending emails, and I'm asking them, I'm trying to get a hold of them to ask them how we should both handle a patient's case. And then I come to find out that the person had a heart attack or something happened and they had to close their doors suddenly. And
that's terrible. And so they don't have anybody, they had no contingency plans if something happens.
Exactly.
So what happens to a practice that has no contingency plans? Like some of these, because you're probably talking about just some small practices, some single owner veterinarian.
Yeah.
What happens to all their patients?
Yeah. So a lot of times then there's the receptionist that comes in and helps to communicate to their their clients, their patients, owners, and families that something happened, and then they tell them, unfortunately, you have to try to find care elsewhere. And then sometimes that can take, as you know, it can take months to get in to see another doctor. And it can be a really unfortunate scenario, and sometimes even cost lives if it was something important.
So if your pet is getting ongoing care and they can't get in to see somebody, it can be a big problem.
Absolutely. And then, as an oncologist, the patients that I see are on regular chemotherapy. And so they're coming in weekly to every other week to get a dose of chemotherapy. And so if something were to happen to me suddenly, they are in mid protocol and something really bad could happen. And so it's important to have some of these contingency plans in place so that.
So you probably, even planning for vacations, you have to be very strategic.
Oh, very strategic. Yeah. You can't just expect to go on vacation. And so
there could be because with chemo, it probably is a very strict regimen. And so you need to make sure everybody's cared for. So do you bring in a locum? You say, I'm going to be gone this week or these days, and you have a substitute?
I can be gone a week to 2 weeks. Beyond that, I can't. And so without having another colleague in the clinic, it becomes really difficult. But even then, beyond 2 weeks, we all have a full patient load. And so it can be hard to ask our colleague to take on longer than a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. We can sort of move patients around to try to make sure that only those patients that absolutely need treatment over those 2 weeks receive treatment. So it can be hard. But if you have a planned absence, you can have a locum come in.
Yeah. So do you think that veterinary medicine, we kind of touched on this, but do you think that they still kind of avoid the honest conversations about disability insurance? Like you mentioned, they're rugged and they think that they're invincible, but do they not think that they're vulnerable?
I mean, I think you may be touching on a point. Maybe it's hard to confront the idea of our impermanence, Nobody likes to think that we're only on this earth for a short period of time. And so maybe that does have to do with it. Maybe it's just we live in a busy world and maybe we just don't want to think about it, or there's just that we just put it off, that's something I've got to do, but it could happen tomorrow, it could happen in 6 months, and there's no urgency to it, so we just keep putting it off because it's also hard to think about. And sometimes we have to pull in family members where it's also difficult to have those conversations, and may bring up other topics that are hard to talk about. So it can be very difficult to have those conversations.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was actually really enlightening. I didn't know. There's some things that I didn't really think about. I didn't realize that when a cat bites, it can actually be more dangerous than a dog bite, it sounds like. And I didn't know that veterinarians have the highest suicide rate. That really makes me so sad. So that's really sad.
We take care of our veterinarians.
We do need to take care of our veterinarians because they take care of us so well. So thank you for everything, for coming in today and for all you do for your patients. It was a really great conversation, and I thank you so much.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.
From the Income Protection Journal, you've been listening to the Income Protection Journal podcast with Jamie Fleischner.